And I welcome everyone to Press TV's News Review program, where we get in depth in one of the day's top stories. Our top story: tens of thousands of people have for a 20th consecutive week thronged the streets of Tel Aviv, voicing anger over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's controversial plans to tighten controls on the Supreme Court. Protesters chanted, "Israel is almost a dictatorship," as they blocked the central highway in Tel Aviv. Israeli media said some 100,000 people took part in the protests, despite Netanyahu putting a pause on the legislation for the time being. The so-called reforms will give the hard-right cabinet greater control over the judiciary. Critics say it will remove vital checks and balances and hand unchecked power over to the cabinet. Joining us now for the program is Firas Al-Najim, Canadian Defenders for Human Rights, joining us from Toronto, Canada, and Robert Fantina, author and journalist, also joining us from Ontario, Canada, Kitchener, to be exact. Gentlemen, welcome both to the program. Firas, we're going to start with you. We know a lot of people feel, Firas, a lot of analysts, that if the Zionist imperialist project is going to work, if they're going to be able to take Palestinian land and encroach on Lebanon and Syria and perhaps Jordan one day, then guess what? They're going to need to be unified for that objective. When we see these kind of cracks, what does it tell us?
Yes, this shows that the Zionist regime is crumbling from inside, and Netanyahu and his extremist cabinet thought they could keep a control and hold on the situation, and that's why they kind of did commit some war crimes and assassinated some Palestinian resistance leaders recently, and got caught up in a battle for 5 days and so on, because he was trying to kind of divert his problems towards the Palestinians, and at the same time he knew that the march for Jerusalem with the Israeli flags and all this extremist activities was also going to happen around the same time. And now we see that it reactivated again inside Palestine against the Zionists and against the Netanyahu regime. So it shows that he's failed miserably, and that they're back on the ground and they're dissatisfied with him and his cabinet, and that they're not going to let go of what they want and their demands, as it seems. And Netanyahu, I think his arrogance will continue to grow, and this will just cause more instability inside for the Zionist regime. And he might come up with another plan, maybe to start another battle with the Palestinians, kind of, or something like this, or set foot for some type of terrorist attack inside Palestine to kind of keep himself busy and keep his people busy at the same time. But it's coming back. You can see that he's not able to run away from his issues and his problems, and the laws that he's trying to implement. It's obviously a type of a dictatorship system right now that he's trying to implement, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction from his people.
Thank you, Firas. And Robert, I'd like to welcome you to the program. Robert Fantina joining us from Kitchener, Ontario. Now, Robert, when you have over 100,000 people week in and week out protesting against this controversial judicial reform bill, when you have your key allies outside of the occupied territories basically backing these protesters, telling you scrap this thing, it's anti-democratic, you can't help yourself when you need to help yourself scrap this thing. What is that a sign of there, Robert?
As was mentioned by your other commentator, this is Israel beginning to implode from the inside. Netanyahu has put himself in a position where he has to continue with these so-called reforms, otherwise he will lose his coalition and he will lose office. It's very important to him to stay in office for a variety of reasons, not the least of because he enjoys the power, but also he is under investigation for of criminal corruption charges, and he wants to be able to remain in power so that he will not be held accountable for them. However, he's created a situation where the people in Israel are protesting against him in these huge numbers every weekend, and this has been 20 weeks now. This is not something that's going away. It's interesting, though, to see that the Israeli people are upset about the potential loss of their own rights. They don't care about the rights of the Palestinians, but that, of course, is another issue. But Netanyahu has put himself into a bad position. He's losing the support of the international community. As you mentioned, the other countries are saying that these are very undemocratic. Even countries that try to foster the myth of Israel as a democratic nation now, not recognize that it's a Zionist apartheid regime. They're even starting to back away and saying that this can't be done. But Netanyahu needs the support of this racist cabinet that has been appointed. So he no matter what he does, he's going to lose in the long run. This is not something that is going to benefit the people of Israel because it's just going to bring chaos. Hopefully there will be some benefit in the future as a result for the people of Palestine.
Thank you. And Firas, just a few days ago, there was that so-called flag march, very controversial in Al-Quds old city there. There are extremist settlers with, I'm glad you guys both alluded to this new cabinet, extreme far right, possibly the most far right in the regime's history. One of the ministers were there, Itamar Ben-Gvir. The settlers, these extremist settlers, are walking hand in hand with them saying death to Arabs. Arabs go home, ironically. I mean, they were there before these guys showed up. But anyway, dirty Arabs, all kinds of racist stuff. This is a guy that's part of the establishment walking hand in hand, making these racist gestures and slurs. Is that something that we should be concerned about with this cabinet, this kind of mindset, and with an undeclared nuclear arsenal at its disposal?
Yes, I mean, this is the real face of the Zionist regime. These today, like you said, this far-right extremist cabinet, they're going out and supporting all these marches, and they're trying to ignite the situation inside Palestine and kind of inflaming more extremism against the Palestinians. And you can see that when the Palestinians were standing by, like from the media, they were getting hit by rocks, and the police were just standing by watching. The army was standing there watching as if they're supporting it. They were attacking the Palestinians instead of attacking the Zionists that were shouting these type of evil slogans and biased slogans and hate slogans. The politicians were involved. It wasn't just him; it was other politicians as well. I've seen a lot of videos now circulating, and the same thing here. Like we have the walk with Israel that's coming up on the 22nd on Monday, and a lot of politicians usually join this, and they do a march and a marathon here in Canada, North York, and we're going to be protesting that, right? We're going to be coming with the Palestinian flags with rabbis that are anti-Zionist, and to face off with these people and confront them and tell them that you're supporting apartheid, an evil regime, an occupation. You're celebrating 75 years of crimes against humanity, occupation. And we're not going to stay quiet and silent about it wherever we are in the world. And we're going to call for a free Palestine. And unfortunately, a lot of politicians come inside and support this and walk through and take pictures and then post them on their Twitters and different social medias because they want the satisfaction of the Zionists, because Zionists have some control of financial gains in this country and some type of, certain media, things like that. And unfortunately, they sold their souls and their consciousness for benefits and money and contracts and things like that instead of standing for humanity and for justice and for human rights.
Thank you. And final words with you, Robert. Between these protests that we're seeing every week, between the fact that Iran and Saudi Arabia are starting to talk after 7 years of severed ties, and with respect, the U.S. has had a diminished role lately, you very well know, in the Middle East. Where does this leave the likes of people like Benjamin Netanyahu and Itamar Ben-Gvir and the Israeli regime, possibly as isolated as it's been in its history right now?
Yes, and becoming more and more isolated. Israel had high hopes that it would soon establish relations with Saudi Arabia. Those hopes were dashed when Saudi Arabia and Iran re-allied several weeks ago. The United States has taken a backseat, as it should. It should not be involved in the Middle East at all. But with other countries taking more of a lead throughout the Middle East, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and so on, there's a greater chance for peace. These are countries that are more interested in diplomacy than weapon sales, which is what the United States is interested in. So these are good signs that we're seeing. The greater ostracization of Israel, Netanyahu being ostracized on the world stage, the Israeli regime has lost the narrative. People now know that it's an apartheid regime, and that it's brutal and it's cruel. Many governments still want the profits that come from dealing with Israel, but even in the United States, more and more elected officials are condemning Israeli practices against the Palestinians. So these are good signs, but until this reaches fruition, the people of Palestine will continue to suffer. So the efforts of those people who are working for human rights and international law must just continue to be strong, and we must not weaken at all. We have to continue working for peace and international justice.
All right, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure to speak to both of you. Stay safe to you both, and thank you for joining us on the program. Firas Al-Najim from the Canadian Defenders for Human Rights joining us from Toronto, and Robert Fantina, author and journalist, joining us from Kitchener, Ontario. And viewers, that's a wrap for the segment of your Press TV's News Review program. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now.